Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
Let me share a little secret with you about the dental business space. Now, excluding materials and equipment, what's the most marketed item in this space? In other words, you as a dental practice owner, what are you going to be marketed to about the most? Well, dental marketing. And I know that's not a secret per se. If you own a practice, I assume you already know this. There's tons of companies in this space, some that are really good, some that are not so good. And from my being in coaching and training, I could tell you which is which based on client outcomes. I mean, to that end, if I had to pick when meeting with a new client what they're going to be most happy or sad about or upset about, it's going to be prior experience with dental marketing companies. And if you look at the marketing that these marketing companies do, I know I'm using the word marketing a lot, I'm really sorry about that, you'll notice one theme that hits over and over again. And that theme is, we are going to get you more high-quality new patients. This messaging is everywhere. So, what's the secret? Because you've seen all this stuff so far. Well, it's an issue of definitions. What you consider high quality and the marketing company considers high quality may not exactly match. I mean, actually, it probably doesn't. And while explaining this takes some doing, if you get it, it can make a big difference in both your marketing efforts and your practice productivity. And that's what I want to talk about in this week's episode. My name is Jeff Bloomberg, and I'm your host. And probably the best place to start is looking at these definitions. So if I'm a marketing company, which I am not, I mean, I could point you to a good one or two. I mean, there's one really good one. If you've heard Dan Brown on the podcast before. He's the chief operating officer at Bloomberg Digital. It is not my company, but has the same last name. But very cool. I'll put a link to it on the episode webpage. But if I'm a marketing company, I have a specific target in mind when I tell you I'm going to get you high-quality new patients. Now, what that's going to be is I've spoken to you to find out what you're looking for, and I'm going to attack that angle. Like, let's say you want to do a lot of restorative work, or you want to do a lot of implants, or whatever that might be. And how am I going to attack that angle? I'm going to attack it by demographics, income, age, location, search term, which really isn't a demographic, but more income, age, location, etc., depending on what I'm doing for marketing, whether it's postcards or SEO or pay-per-click. If I'm doing Facebook, there's more specific groups I can zero in on, right? If I'm doing an implant funnel, that's a whole different thing, and I get more specific questions to kind of winnow out the exact type of prospect you're looking for. But then again, we're marketing for implants. So if I'm this marketing company, what am I trying to do? Like, what is my deliverable to you? I mean, think about this for a second. I'm giving you phone calls or form leads. You're going to get the phone ringing, or if it's an implant funnel or something of that sort, you're going to get some type of a form lead. And keep in mind sometimes, too, if you're doing pay-per-click, sometimes some of those are form leads. So you got to look for them sometimes in your dashboards. But either way, even if I'm doing, pushing reviews, doing SEO, I'm teaching you a whole social media strategy, right? Why am I doing all of this? So that you're called. You're standing out further ahead of, or you're standing out above your competitor so that you get the phone call or you get the lead. So ideally, if I'm doing my job and I'm happy with how I'm doing for you, you're going to get a volume of calls and forms to your practice that fit the demographic, and that's going to be through your website, your PPC, pay-per-click, social media, postcards, whatever it is that we're doing. So that's what my idea of getting you a high-quality person is. It's a lead. It's a phone call. If you talk to the average doctor, what is a high-quality new patient? Well, it varies a bit, but let's look at some of the qualities at least I've heard over the years. The person cares about their teeth or their dental health or their oral health. They can or will pay for needed treatment, and that can break down into two things. One, I have the money to pay for it, as well as I care enough about my teeth that if something's wrong, I'm going to want to pay for it. I keep my appointments, and I potentially refer you new patients. I'm sure you could add things to this list. I'm sure there are things you'd want to add to the list, but these are some of the biggies. And this is where we run into our problems. The marketing company's expectation of a deliverable, what they're supposed to give you, is the expected level of quality phone calls and form leads through all of their various efforts. It's to get you more of those. The average doctor's expectation is a high-quality new patient sitting in their office that they're getting to meet. These are not the same thing. And sometimes when I'm having trouble thinking with something or I'm stuck in the middle of something, like I have a lot of skin in the game and there's a lot going on, I find it helps to kind of think of something analogous, like a different type of a business or a different type of a thing that I could look at without a dog in that race, so to speak, and make a decision about it. Takes it out of what I'm dealing with immediately and I can think with it. So let me give you two analogies here to think with regards to a service business. So I want you to imagine that you own a restaurant and you hire a marketing company to market your restaurant. So what would you expect them to do? They're going to get people who show up at your door to come eat at your restaurant or make a reservation at your restaurant. So let's say they do this great job and you're going to have this big opening and it's going to be humongous. It's 7 p.m. on a Saturday night. And there's a bunch of people mobbed outside your restaurant, but you forgot you were open on Saturday night. So that creates a bit of a problem, doesn't it? So they delivered what they were supposed to deliver, but you didn't take advantage of what they delivered. And let's look at it from my end for a second. Let's say, take MGE. What do? We do coaching and training services for dental professionals and their teams, right? So I get a prospect, somebody who is interested in MGE services. Maybe they are inquiring about whatever it might be. What's this new patient workshop? What's this power program? Well, am I magically going to get them on the power program? If I hired somebody to get me leads for the power program? Absolutely not. And then to top it off, let's say you called MGE about the power program and my receptionist treated you like garbage, or my salespeople couldn't sell, or my customer service when you showed up was so bad that you couldn't imagine that we could help you. Do you see? So I have something to do with whether I have a high quality lead or not. Now, luckily, this is my shameless plug. Our customer service isn't bad. It's actually awesome. Our power program results are amazing. It's probably the most intensive management training program in the dental industry. It's quite intensive, but the results are just unbelievable. I'll put a link to it on the episode webpage if you want to learn more. There you go, shameless plug. So what's the lesson here? You have a job in making high-quality new patients. The marketing company's job, or the job of marketing really, is to sell something and get a lead. And sometimes people get confused about this. If I'm sending things out to prospective new patients, right? I want them to inquire about, could be anything. It could be an implant funnel, restorative work, Invisalign, whatever. Maybe I'm doing sleep apnea, or maybe I just want more new patients who come in to get their teeth cleaned, just new patients in the area. That's a form of marketing, okay, that I'm going to then have to convert when the person shows up. But then there's also marketing that gets heavily overlooked in dentistry, which is probably a good subject for another episode. I think I did do an episode on this at one point. But what is marketing essentially supposed to do? It's supposed to sell something. So I told this story in an episode recently because it just reminded me of it. But we had a client who was super pissed off because one of their patients showed up. They did Invisalign, right? But this patient had gone off between cleanings and he'd gotten Invisalign done in another doctor's office, right? And they're all pissed off, like, why would they do that? And they asked the patient if they knew that their office also did Invisalign. The patient said no. Well, they hadn't marketed it very well. So marketing doesn't just apply to prospective new patients in your area. You have a huge patient base who actually trusts you more than people who aren't in your office, that you should also be marketing heavily to, at least in the sense that they know what you do. Do you do emergency appointments? They should know this. Do you do implants? They should know this. Do you do Invisalign? They should know this. You should be marketing this to your patients, not only in the mail, but there should be signs in your practice, things that people can look at so that they understand that you do these things. Anyway, but especially with a service business, where it gets kind of interesting is if I'm selling iPhones, you just have to look at a commercial for the iPhone or a video for the iPhone and it sounds cool and you just want to order an iPhone. With the service business, it's so specific and so individualized. If I come into your practice, you're going to have a specific treatment plan for me versus the next patient, that it requires somebody to sell it. It actually requires somebody to sell it. And this is where things start to go wrong and this whole high quality thing gets into trouble. I mean, think about it for a second. If my job as the marketing company is to give you leads, how good are you at converting those leads? If you get phone calls, how good is your receptionist at converting these phone calls and turning them into new patients? Now, and this is where this whole quality thing becomes an issue. So let's say your receptionist is not very skilled. The patient asks some unusual questions. They don't know how to field these, etc. They're not the easiest person to handle on the phone, and they don't convert the patient. Well, then they could easily, because, people love being, what's the word I'm looking for? Being accountable for things that went well. I don't know if you've noticed this. When something goes well, people will absolutely claim credit for it in a heartbeat, right? You had a great day in the office and your scheduler just lit it up. They're going to be, if you go, hey, did you schedule those patients? They're going to claim responsibility instantaneously because, of course, they did, and, it went well. If they have huge openings on the schedule. You go, look, are you responsible for these openings you're going to get? And this is sort of human nature. Well, this patient, I confirmed them, and they said they were going to show up, and this person always misses, so I confirmed them 3 times, and they still didn't show up. In other words, they don't own it 100%. And I'm not saying this makes them a bad person. This is kind of common. This is what you see out there, as opposed to, oh yeah, I was responsible for these 2-hour openings, because that's a bad thing to be responsible for, right? So people are happy to claim responsibility or accountability for the good stuff and not necessarily the bad stuff, right? So if I'm your receptionist and I'm not great at handling calls, well, then of course it's not my fault. It's the marketing company's fault. Or, what kind of people are we marketing to, doctor? I mean, these patients really, they don't seem that interested in getting quality care. They're just really who are we marketing to? It's the marketing's problem. All right. So let's assume, or even worse, if you get form leads, you may not even be following these up. I've seen that where the follow-up for the form leads is so inadequate. The idea of what it's going to actually take to convert these leads is nowhere near what it's actually going to take. And let me give you an example of this. Well, again, I like analogies. Let's say I was training for a marathon and I'm running, a mile a week. That wouldn't work out well unless I started to up my volume. You see. So someone may have an idea of what's involved. I get a form lead from an implant funnel, and I think, oh, well, I'll just call them, once a month, and hopefully they'll come in. Oh, heck no. That requires phone calls every day, texts, emails, until this person actually wakes up and responds, because you have a lot of other people competing in the same space. So how are you going to stand out? You need to get a hold of this person. So the activity that occurs, and I've seen this happen, where you have a really good marketing company, get a bunch of leads from an implant funnel. The office's follow-up is anemic. And then the office turns around and goes, oh, well, it's the marketing company's not giving us good leads. Well, what were they expecting these people to do? Like come in, bang your door down, and beg them, please, doctor, will you do an implant? Here's my credit cards, run one. They're not going to do that. That just doesn't happen. And I think this is what messes us up a little bit, is that the top tier of your patient base, and I use this word advisedly, in the sense your top tier, meaning the people that are going to be most responsible for their teeth, they have a lot of attention on oral health. That's the top of your patient base, like the top 20%. These are the people, I'll often say, if you had to cancel them because there was a snow day, they're following your office up to get back on the schedule. That's the top 20%, folks. But then what about the other, the next 60% down from that? They're not bad people. They're just not as hip on chasing their oral health. Doesn't mean they can't be made to be that way through education and communication and things like that. They just aren't. They're great. You have a guy, he's a mechanic, he's great at rebuilding a transmission, but he didn't know that having periodontal disease leads to potential cardiovascular issues. He has no clue. Well, who's going to tell him? You can go, well, I told him, but did he get it? See, so part of it is you get these offices chasing, because you'll get this one great new patient. You go, I want more people like that. Not everybody is like that. And I'm not saying that makes them deficient. It's just some people have more of a bead and attention on oral health than others. That doesn't mean you can't make the other 60% of patients have that same degree of, maybe not fervor, but of attention on taking care of themselves. You can do that, but that has to be done in the practice. And you'll notice I said the top 20% and the next 60, because 20% of the people you're going to get in your practice are trouble. We've talked about that on other episodes, right? But it's your toxic patients, your problem patients, etc. But the whole point here is, if I'm not converting calls and I'm not very good at it, let's say my conversion rate is terrible, I could just as easily go, well, because you, the doctor, or you, the office manager, is not answering the phone. Maybe you're listening to calls, hopefully. But I could turn around and tell you, well, doctor, this marketing is just not very good because the people who call are just not interested. Or I called that implant patient once, that implant funnel patient once, and never called me back. They must not care about their teeth. That's not true. And it's very easy to blame that, because it's a lot easier to do that than saying, well, I just didn't call them enough, or I didn't do a very good job in communicating with and handling this patient. And again, it doesn't make your receptionist bad. Maybe they need some more training. They probably do. I would say that in about 90% of cases, to become better at handling those types of issues and situations. But let's say, so that's the first thing. I could say, well, it's not high quality because I can't convert. All right. But let's say you're good at converting. Your office is good at converting. You can get whoever answers your phone or follows up your form leads, gets people on the schedule. You've only won half the battle at this point. Because if you look at the prices on some of these things, the cost for a pay-per-click lead is probably $300-$400. Same thing with a postcard lead. implant leads, funnel leads are way higher, usually like $800 because they go through a lot more filtering. So I've dropped $800 to get this patient in my practice for a free evaluation. At this point, our ROI, even though we've done a good enough job to get them to show up, is still not very good. It's actually, I'm sorry, wrong word. It's non-existent. We actually haven't converted this, so therefore our ROI is terrible until we do something with this person. And obviously, if the marketing was good, they met the conditions. They were the demographic I was looking for. They were between the ages of 45 and 64, and they lived in this area, and their income was this, whatever, right? And sure, it helps if they have these conditions. But I will say this: I've seen cases where people have a lot of money and don't buy, and people who don't have money but really are excited about doing it figure out a way to do it. They get someone to co-sign, or they figure out a way to pay. So I wouldn't necessarily wrap all my wits around it, or my hopes around that one issue. But let's say the basic conditions are there. This is a person who potentially could afford your treatment and, is there, all right? So let's use an analogy again. I could get tons of people to show up at a seminar. Say I get a bunch of people to show up at a seminar, the Practice Booster seminar. It's 2 days long. And obviously, I'm hoping to convert, let's just be real, okay? Hoping to convert some of the people that are at this seminar into becoming more longer-term MGE clients. That's the whole point, right? That's what you're doing when you're doing marketing. Let's not kid ourselves. So I do a Practice Booster seminar, and I get 50 doctors to show up. And we do a good seminar. Say seminar is really excellent, and my seminar staff are great, the seminar speakers are excellent. Let's say my sales force is terrible. We just can't convert anybody. We convert one person who wants to buy the next thing. That's it. So, we spent $30,000 putting on this seminar, and we made $10,000. Well, that ROI is terrible. So if I wanted to look at that, and if I felt bad about it because I dropped all this money and it didn't turn out well, I could easily go, well, I got a bunch of doctors here that didn't care about their practices or being successful. Do you see the parallel here? The same thing applies in your practice. You could get a bunch of patients in, and they're not part of that top 20% who are really super concerned about oral health. They actually take some work and some explanation. And if you can't sell, you're not very good at closing, then your ROI is going to be terrible. I come in and I need 6 crowns, and I'm like, let me think about it. And you don't know how to handle me. You don't know how to communicate with me. Well, your ROI on this is zero. You spent $300 to get me in the door, and you made nothing. And again, I'm not trying to focus on it's all about making money. It's not. It's about delivering services, because if you do the service, you're going to get paid. You're going to make money. If your office is doing what it's supposed to do, delivering volumes of high quality dentistry, you're going to get paid and you're going to make money. Assuming you're not massively inundated with plans, but that's a whole other podcast, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that deficiencies in the practice can contribute to the idea, whether it's at your front desk or on your sales process, it can contribute to the idea that you're getting, quote unquote, low quality new patients, when it's in fact not true. It's the fact that whoever's handling your phones or whoever's doing sales isn't doing a very good job. So this is where, we're getting to, I don't know when this episode's going to air. So if it airs, around the new year, I'll say Happy New Year. If it's after the new year, Happy New Year. If it's coming up, Happy New Year soon. But if you're looking at something for 2026, what do you want to improve on? These are sort of the points. If your game is to expand or scale your practice, these are some of the points I would take a look at. Number one, how are we converting new patients? Because if you're doing marketing, this is something that's important to know. If my conversion is low, my cost per lead is going to go up. Do you see? Or cost per new patient is going to go up. If I get 100 phone calls and I spent $10,000 for that 100 phone calls, in other words, $100 a phone call, and I convert 20 of them, I'm spending $500 per new patient. Whereas if I convert 50 of them, I'm spending $200 per new patient. Do you get the idea? So I would look at that. Number one, how is my conversion? Look at all the incoming traffic you've had into the practice. That'd be the first thing I would look at, because then you make sure there's no stops on the line. The other thing to know, too, it's not always your receptionist who's not converting them. In certain cases, your availability may be terrible. I was talking to an office the other day that would take a month to get a new patient in. And, I kind of jokingly said, I don't know why you bother marketing, but I was only really half joking because, there's this idea that if it's hard to get something, it makes it more valuable. And there is a degree of truth to that from an economics perspective. That's why diamonds are more expensive. They're not everywhere. If there were diamonds all over the street, they wouldn't be worth anything. It would be worth what dirt is, right? But I don't see, especially in the case of a healthcare business, I don't see any benefit in making patients wait if they call your practice and want to get in, unless they really want to wait. Hey, I can't come in for a month, fine, make them wait a month. But ideally, you should be getting a new patient in within 24 to 48 hours. So I'd make sure, A, I have my conversions good, and B, my availability is good. I actually have room on the schedule to get people in quickly, unless they themselves, hey, I can't come in for a week. Well, that's on them, right? Then the next thing I would look at is, what is my conversion rate like? From a sales perspective. I know I use the word conversion rate twice there. Let's say close rate. In other words, if I'm presenting $10,000 worth of treatment, how much of that am I closing on average? You could look at treatment plans presented versus accepted last year or in a given month. And if you're running in the 20s or 30s or whatever, that's not very good. You may need to improve that. And here's the cool thing, and these are two little toggles that you could sort of switch around in your practice just by improving the conversion rate with your receptionist and improving your close rate from the treatment presentation perspective. That's just training for the individuals involved. You're not actually having to spend money each time you do it like you would with marketing. For every lead, I'm spending money. But with these two things, you're just doing training. But that training can pay off hugely. If your receptionist goes from converting 20% of your incoming calls to 50, that's an extra 30 new patients a month if you're getting 100 calls a month. If your close rate goes from 20% to 70% and you're presenting an average of 100,000 a month, you go from closing 20,000 to 70. Those are huge, massive impacts potentially on your practice with very little work. You're only working on a couple of individuals. To that end, I do have one more shameless plug. I've talked about them before for sales training. We do the MGE Communication and Sales Seminars. I'll put a link to it on the episode webpage. That really teaches doctors how to explain treatment well and get patients to want what they need. But anyway, beside that, so otherwise, what's happening, if you're looking for these people that in your mind are going to come in begging for you to do treatment, you're looking for maybe the top 20 or 10% of, willingness factor with regards to patients. In which case, if that's what everybody's looking for, you're all fighting over the top 20% and you're leaving millions and millions of people that you're not giving their due attention, which with a little bit of work could be turned into great patients. This is why, and I've said this before, you see hygiene schedules go so bad and so many inactive patients in the average practice, because the people that are on the hygiene schedule, because if you think about the math of it, the more you add new patients, the bigger your patient base and your hygiene department should be growing if you're a general dentist. It should be natural. If you add 20 new patients in a month and let's say 20% leave, 16 are left over, those 16 patients should translate at least into 32 recalls a year. If you start doing the math on this, your recall area should always be growing. Well, if it's not, what it means is that the easy patients, the patients who you don't have to chase, are always showing up, and the patients that need a little bit of work or need to be called are not showing up. So you're spending all this money to get them in, and you're spending zero money to keep them or retain them. But then the problem is everybody's chasing that top 20%, which is silly. You're leaving millions and millions of people without attention. You see? So what's the solution? As I mentioned, I would look at both of these things when you go back. Depending on when you listen to this podcast, I would look at, am I converting new patients? Right, that would be the first thing I would look at, and why if I'm not. And then how is my treatment acceptance? My treatment acceptance is not where it should be. I'm telling you, you may not believe me, especially in this era of people having empty marketing promises. We can teach you how to get patients to want what they need. It's not some weird trick. It's just communication skills. And it can make huge financial impacts in your practice. But even more important than that for me, and I'm not saying this just to sound good, I'm being real about this, is if that patient needs 6 crowns and only wants to do 1 or 2 that insurance is going to cover, what's better for them? It's better that they did the 6. Well, if you can actually communicate with that person so they understand the value of it and they do it, it's not just better for your practice, it's more production, it's better for the patient, it's better for their overall health, you see. So anyway, that's what I would focus on as you go into the new year if you're looking to scale or increase productivity, or you're trying to, have more high-quality new patients. Realize that you have a lot to do with whether a patient is quality or not. The marketing company should be delivering what you're asked for, and they should be delivering it in volume. But if they're doing that, then it's your job to make sure that these people convert and that you actually get a decent ROI. So again, I don't know when this episode is airing. I know it's airing around New Year's. If it airs after New Year's, Happy New Year. If it's before New Year's, Happy soon-to-be New Year. Otherwise, folks, I have those links on the episode webpage. And if you want to find out more about MGE, you can find us online at mgeonline.com or call us at 800-640-1140. Folks, have a great week, and we will see you the next episode.